Thank you. See you next week, Chuck. We appreciate you. You got your thing to record it on that too? But it was on that. It was not on. That looks new. Looks like it's recording. Okay. Yeah.
now. What's up, everybody? Check, check, check.
Check 1, 2.
I can hear myself.
He's up here.
Yeah.
Check 1, 2.
Let's see if I can hear you. Can't hear myself. Well, hopefully, folks in the community can hear us.
They were plugging it up here.
We are. Oh, I see. That's what's happening. Okay.
Maybe you need to plug this
Yes,
in there
yes.
somewhere.
We're going to play a little bit of house music for you, and we're also going to
Can you hear yourself?
introduce our very special guest. All right, there we go. Yo, baby. Hey, everybody, this is Lori Branch with the Vintage House Show on Street Beat, WNUR 89.3 Evanston, Chicago. Welcome back. Vintage House is the only on-air radio show and podcast in Chicago dedicated to illuminating and preserving the lives, music, and careers of house music legends, pioneers, etc. So we're just so excited to be with you once again. We're here every Wednesday. This happens to be my Wednesday. In case you were keeping track, I'm the first Wednesday of the month. We're here with our executive producer, Lauren Lowry. What's up, Lauren?
What up, Lori? Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, everybody. And I'm really excited for this conversation today. I'm so excited, super duper excited. I'm going to introduce the White Knight. You maybe have heard of him. I know that he's got such a long, illustrious history. I was doing my research this week, and it's going to be such an interesting conversation. I'm so glad you have a videographer here because I was like, I hope he turns this into like a movie. So Nick Kaminsky, also known as the White Knight, is a rapper, a producer, a DJ. He's done so much, and I want to get into your illustrious career. But I want to start by asking the most obvious question: how did we meet?
Well, I knew you before you knew me. So, back in the day, when I first started in the music industry, I would go to the warehouse and all the deep houses outside.
Did you?
And the first time I saw you was at a party at the loft.
Okay.
And I was just kind of there, playing on the wall. And I was like, wow, I can really dig her.
Was that the loft that was on in the South Loop area?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess there was only one. I'm thinking about New York. Right?
And then you started DJing in Bucktown, which is, I grew up in Humble Park.
Yes.
So Red Dog was literally 5 minutes from me.
Yeah.
And I would hang out at Red Dog and go to Red Dog. And I saw you again.
That's so funny.
And back then, there were not a lot of women DJs.
No, I remember. I was often alone. Helen was there. She was just getting started when I was working at Red Dog.
So that's where I became interested in what you did.
Thank you.
And I was watching it for a long time.
Yeah.
And that was, right, I think that was kind of the beginning of White Knight, pre-White Knight era.
Okay.
So, it was changed.
But you started, so you've been doing this, you've been in the game for a long time. We're going to get into a few things today, but the one thing that Nick, do you prefer to be called White Knight or Nick, or do you answer to something?
You can call me White.
Okay. The one thing about White Knight is,
But it's not the, it's just White Knight.
White Knight. I know, I keep saying that. I know, it's like a superhero.
Yeah, I think that's considered. We'll clear that up tonight as well.
Okay, well, good. We'll talk about that. But White Knight is most known as one of the architects of hip hop, which is a movement that came out of Chicago. And I want to hear all about that. But before we get there, can we hear about the origins of your name?
Okay, so when I first, so I grew up in Humble Park.
Okay.
And at the time, my best friend, his name was Jesse Willis. You may know him by making the record Girls on the Floor.
Okay, yeah.
He was my best friend, and at the time, he was known as the world's littlest DJ. Very short. And he used to stand on crates and DJ.
Okay.
And he was extremely popular in the city today. If he were still here today, he would be one of the greats.
Yes.
Unfortunately, due to some circumstances, he isn't. And he was my best friend. And he was real famous and popular at the time, and I wanted to make a record. So what ended up happening was I told him I want to make a record. Him being my best friend, he decides that he's going to make an appointment with Rocky from DJ International.
Mm-hmm.
So he takes me in the car, go to the meeting. Rocky, we sit in this meeting, and Rocky says, "So what can you do? Can you sing? No. Can you do anything? No. I'm a b-boy. We were b-boys." So, you know, he's like, "Well, you know, there's nothing I can do with you, so thanks for coming by. I was getting in contact with you." And that was what kind of friend he was. He took me to get me let down because he was that good of a friend.
He wanted to show you that you got to do something.
Right.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, a couple of weeks later, he passed away.
Oh, sorry.
And what happened was, I was hearing that the guy Rocky at the record label wanted to talk to me. And Jesse's last request to Rocky was for me to make a record.
Wow.
So the day he met with Rocky, he said, "You're in the studio tomorrow." Well, prior to that, I was hanging out with Jesse Saunders and Vince Saunders on the South Side. At the time, Jesse had started a label with his On and On record.
Right.
And I was just trying to get on. I was hanging out after that with Steve Hurley and Keith Lemon.
How did you meet Jesse and Saunders?
Um,
How we met everybody? Some club.
I probably met him at a club.
Yeah.
I think he was DJing at Sawyer's.
Okay. Yeah.
At the time, I was like a pre-house fan.
Yes.
I'd go watch Frankie Knuckles and Jesse. And I was I fell into that circle.
Sure.
So at the time, I was hanging out with Steve Hurley and trying to get on. And Rocky decides that I'm going to be in the studio tomorrow. So the first house record that ever came out was, I don't know if I put this in chronological order, but On and On came out.
Okay.
And then Steve was with Keith and he made Music is the Key. The third house record ever released in Chicago was Never Give Up by Rocky. And the vocals were Steve's. Steve helped put that together. Keith Lemon sang on it. On the B side, you'll hear me rapping because we were B-boys.
What year did you release Never Give Up?
I believe it was the summer of '83 and '84. And so if you listen to the B side, you'll hear the B-boy and the hip hop kind of merged with house.
Okay.
Even if you speak to Rocky, he'll tell you the first house records that have rap on it were, you know, On and On had a little rap. Music is a Key has Music is a Key. The Set Yourself Free does a little rap.
Yeah.
But Never Give Up, the whole B side is a hip hop rap over house, which inevitably is some.
So we were calling it house music in 1983. So I'm curious about how is it how are you categorizing music? Definitely, you know, give credit as some of those records as like these were the first that we called house music after we kind of established that this was a canon of its own.
Right.
And then we say, okay, well, these records kind of fit that bill. They come from Chicago. You know, they've
You know,
got
it
these
was
things.
kind of interesting. You know, the DJs were playing, and they were playing a lot of music that came in from Europe and disco, kind of all merging together. And I think that the DJs, you know, they would make their own beat tracks, but the original tracks were just music that was made, in my opinion, because we wanted to make our own music.
Sure.
So I don't even know where
What we were calling it.
there was no title at that time.
Yeah. And that's what I think is the beauty about house music, is that we recognized that there were these songs that were being created in Chicago by people, you know, in studios with very rudimentary equipment, and some that was you know, maybe not so rudimentary, that was being produced in studios, but they all had a very different feel than what had come before it, and so that's why we sort of created this new classification.
Well, the original house music was, and I was there. Steve Hurley had a keyboard called a Poly 800, and you know, at the time he was a DJ, and you know, he was a tremendous producer even then.
Right.
He had an ear. Everybody had an ear.
Sure.
So inevitably it ended up evolving. I don't know if when it came out in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
but suddenly house music and jack your body. Everybody was jacking their body at the clubs.
Absolutely.
Jack, jack, jack.
Yeah.
So inevitably, that's a great question. I don't even know where the name house music came from, and I was
What-
there in the beginning. Okay.
Look, White Knight, that is a question that we always ponder on this show. And there's a lot of different origin stories. We'll save that for another time. But I think that, and Maurice Davis is saying, what's up?
Hi, Maurice. How are you?
That is White Knight. We're talking, as always, about the origin story, but really, we're going to get into sort of, In Our DNA and the Hip House documentary. But I just think it's such a curious time. Go ahead, please.
Oh, you wanted to ask me how I got the name White Knight.
I did.
So how the name White Knight came out, because it's asked, and a lot of people don't know, right?
Okay.
So when I was working, hanging out with Steve and Steve Hurley
Mhm.
and Keith Nunley, I wasn't a singer at the time, and JM Silk was formed where Keith Nunley was the vocalist with Steve Hurley.
Right.
They were my friends. I
Mhm.
hung out with them, and I think they didn't want to let me down. So Keith Nunley had a friend named Samson Butchmore.
Mm-hmm.
He was a brother.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, Nick, Butch is your new partner. And I'm like, okay, so what are we going to call ourselves?
Yes.
I'm white, you're black.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, I'm white and you're Knight.
Okay.
So the name White Knight came from
The two of you.
the two of
Okay.
us together. And inevitably we started recording, and Butch decided he wanted to be a solo artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, well, you could take the songs that we did, but I'm going to keep the name White Knight.
Okay.
So that name started all the way in the beginning.
That's great.
And the name's kind of, people have their thoughts about what the name means, but the truth behind it is that's how the name came.
I love it. And so you didn't have to take them to court to keep it, though, did you?
No.
I'm kidding. I'm thinking of like Tina Turner.
No. He decided.
I'm keeping the name.
I think he decided that he wanted to pursue his own
Yes.
thing, and I just did mine, and it kind
That's
of worked
great.
out in that way.
What's Butch doing now? Samson Butchmore.
I haven't spoken to him probably since he went solo.
Okay. Well, there it
But he's a good
is.
guy.
I'm
So-
sure. Let's talk. I want to know a little bit more about you, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear a little bit more where you come from. Are you a Chicagoan?
I grew up in Humboldt Park. In
You grew
Chicago
up the whole time.
my whole life.
Your whole. Okay. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Roberto Clemente, Taft.
Yes.
I went to Schurz.
Yeah.
Back then we bounced high school.
I was about to say it was only 4 years. Now, wait a minute.
So it depends what was
Can't
going
keep
on in the
naming-
neighborhood. If it was hot in one neighborhood, you went to
Oh
another
my
high school.
goodness.
It was
That's. I was just looking up something about Roberto Clemente just the other day. I was telling my kid who he was as we were driving around in that neighborhood. That's so that's interesting. So I know that there's a few other house heads that came out of that community too. Who were some of your collaborators earlier on?
In my particular
Yeah,
neighborhood, I don't
out of
remember.
Humboldt Park.
I don't know anyone else. that
You
came
were
out.
you were it.
Yeah.
So what drew you out of that neighborhood into this other scene?
Well, when I lived in Humboldt Park, it
Yeah.
was a predominantly Latino community,
Yes.
and African American, and we were like there were only 2 white families in the whole community where I grew up.
Wow. Okay.
So from being young in school, all of my friends were from the hood.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I had no boundaries getting on the train going to Jesse Saunders' house at the 95th and
Yeah,
79th, and I
yeah.
was hanging out because I never really had a boundary.
Okay.
I
But
felt-
you discovered something in your life took you away from that hood to be a part of this other scene. What was
Oh, no,
what was your inspiration?
Actually, the scenes were going on co-simultaneously.
Okay,
So if you were on the north side of Chicago,
sure.
predominantly Hispanic, they had nightclubs like Janelle's
Mhm.
and all these raging clubs that were on the north side. At the same time, the south side had Sawyer's, the Warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago's unfortunately a very segregated city.
Yes.
So these 2 movements were co-simultaneously
Mm-hmm.
going on at the same identical time.
Yeah.
Now you would know that possibly because you DJ'd on the north side at Red Dog.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Lots of
So,
folks.
I always look at, 290 was
Mhm.
always a divider of two complete different worlds that coexisted at the same time
Yes,
that kind of don't try to acknowledge one another.
that's interesting.
Right.
We've not thought of the expressway as one of those dividing lines,
Well,
but you're right.
There's 6 or 7 million people in Chicago,
Yeah.
and they're
area.
Chicago area,
Yeah.
but they're multicultural.
Mm-hmm.
So, people in Chicago have a tendency to hang around with who they're around.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this invisible wall
Yeah.
that once the B96s and the WBMX Oak Park Chicago
Mhm.
started putting on the Bad Boy Bills, the Julian Jumping
Sure,
Presses, the Kenny,
absolutely.
Jason,
Mm-hmm.
and Farley was on there. There was suddenly a merge.
That's completely correct.
Okay, and suddenly the entire city at one point,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, had to tune in to listen to what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Well, when you tuned in at that time, you heard Farley Jackmaster Funk.
Yeah.
But following Farley Jackmaster Funk, you heard Bad Boy Bill.
Exactly.
So that's where, I believe the fusion took place, where once and for all everything collided,
Mm-hmm.
and you only at the time you only had like one radio station. At first it was WBMX Oak Park Chicago, Armando Rivera,
Yeah.
and then later on you had GCI had their mix show, and you
Mhm.
had B96 that added their show,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the fusion.
Yeah.
And when people say, well, house music, who started house music? Who's the godfather of house music?
Yeah.
Who's the founder? I feel that there's a lot of different people.
I think so too.
Right. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
get credit.
I like to think that there's like a group of founding people. And I don't even like to say godfathers. It's like the founders. I like the way you just described it. Because so many people had their hands in that pie at the same time.
Right. And the people that have the ability to put out their narrative
Mhm.
are the ones that are controlling the narrative.
Yes.
Right.
All right, Daryl said, don't forget WKKC. There were a lot. I think you're right, Daryl. There was a
There's
lot of stations.
WKKC, WCRI.
Absolutely.
There was.
Even WVON. I mean, Herb Kent's show, which I forget it was on whatever it was, but he had the Punk Out Hour. That was in 1980 when we were calling it the Punk Out Hour in 1980-81. So there were a lot of independent stations doing it, but I do think, White Knight, your point is correct in that what sort of kicked it off to another level was when you had those 5 DJs from different parts of the city that was very curated, very intentionally to do exactly that, is to bridge the gaps from those very segregated communities. Because I might know Bad Boy Bill, but I didn't know Farley. Or I knew Farley, but I didn't know Julian Jumping Perez. But now I do because I'm exposed to them in this new format.
Right, and people have a tendency in Chicago to know what's in their environment,
Absolutely.
what they're used to, what parties they go to, what they like.
Oh, of course.
And people have a tendency to not veer out into the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying, there was a lot going on simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
and once it merged, that's when I believe the explosion happened, house music happened,
Yes.
the terminology happened. And the interesting thing about it is, at that time,
Mm-hmm.
everybody would party together.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter who you were,
That's true.
where you were from, what your preferences were.
Yes. So yes, I'm hearing the WBMX did break the barrier. So that's one thing I think we all agree on. And we did, I worked with a couple with Vernell Bird and Gerald Lott a few years ago to actually do a 5-part series on WBMX and the history of the Hot Mix 5 and sort of why they were instrumental in doing exactly what you described. Unfortunately, none of them wanted to come on the show. But
the very first time I heard my record on the radio was Kenny Jam and Jason.
Yeah, he's great. Listen, so let's get to the music. I love listening to, whenever we have a guest like you who's prolific and got stuff all over the place and YouTube and even on iTunes and you have a lot of stuff on I'm sorry, I'm blanking on many of these outlets. I was just really excited to hear the music. And so I want to talk a little bit about your delving into it. There was a little time with DJ International. So give us just a little bit of that timeline and when it started.
So
you
if you
creating tracks.
if yeah, so like the first tracks, you know, it was White Night Jacks, We'll Never Give Up,
Mhm.
then White Night Jacks, and then there was that fusion point.
Yes.
Okay, because if you listen to Never Give Up, it sounds like a gospel record,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a chorus in there. I went out to looking to make this record. I went to Baptist Church and I discovered a guy named Ricky Diller who was in a gospel choir,
That's right.
and I brought all these people into the studio, and I did basically a gospel house record, but I didn't sing it.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you know, I went and I did White Night Jacks the House, which was more of an urban ghetto beat, North Side kind of gangbangery type of track.
Mm-hmm.
And when that kind of blew up, if you listen to the song, the whole song is White Night Jacks the House.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
how the name started to get out there.
I love it.
And then when I made Yo Baby Yo,
Mm-hmm.
is when the whole thing really kind of exploded. That record was like a hit record for 4 years straight.
I love it.
Now, from my earlier time, I used to hang around with Jesse Saunders and Vince Lawrence and Wayne Williams. And Wayne Williams had became the A&R director for Jive. Jive came into Chicago. And one thing about Wayne Williams is he's a visionary.
He is.
He's always been a person who could see, you know, he was, in my opinion, he was someone who kind of never had a boundary.
Yeah.
And he could see everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he knew how to make the connections.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very unique. Not a lot of people have that broad
I agree.
thought process, right?
I'm a big Wayne Williams fan. He knows that.
So me too. Because
Yes.
he helped change my life a lot.
That's great.
So moving forward, Wayne decides that he wants to sign. I had a record that came out called "Keep It Moving" because the crowd said so.
Mm-hmm.
It was blowing up all over the mix shows, all over the radio, and Wayne had signed me to Jive.
Okay.
And that's when the music came out. It ended up going worldwide, all over the place, globally, and you know, then it kind of crossed over because the mix shows had changed more to pop radio, and the DJs kind of divided up on different stations, and we kind of crossed over, and that's kind of where the hip house music part of house music genre really blew up on the street, but then it kind of crossed over more mainstream.
Yeah. And hip house is a term that I think was coined by Fast Eddie.
Right.
But you alluded to the fact that you were kind of doing that even before that term came around. I mean, some of your first records were sort of a combination of rapping over house tracks or pre-house tracks or whatever you call it.
Absolutely. And you know, when Eddie came out with his stuff, it was he made full-fledged songs,
Okay.
and it kind of blew up, and it was kind of like exciting. And you know, back then we were not really trying to compete with each other.
Right.
We were all making music for the love of the music. When you're young,
Yeah.
you're not thinking about money. You're
Yeah.
not thinking about how am I going to get paid, publishing. You just want to be famous
That's
and
right.
have a hit.
You'll
and
sign anything.
yeah, you want to just go to the party and you want to be the spotlight of the party.
Right. Right.
You know, so though, fortunately, you know, those records blew up. I ended up on Jive, which at the time was interesting because, you know, my label mates on Jive were Boogie Down Productions.
Yeah.
You know, it was really a cutting edge hip hop label.
Oh yeah, I know. I have a lot of Jive records in my collection.
You know, so you can imagine how excited I was to be
Yeah.
like part of that family at the time.
Did you? So DJ Lady D is in the house. What's up, DJ Lady D?
How you doing, Lady
What's
D?
up, Tom? Darlene said I used to go to the record store, to the hip house over west. You go to the
Yeah, Hip House was in the Brickyard
yeah.
Mall.
See there. So yeah, then you know, I wanted to get back to sort of the genesis of hip house, but before that, I wanted to unpack a little bit about the studio experience because you talked a little bit about that, and sometimes it's a bit of a mystery to folks. Like, how does it happen? So you're a person who wants to make a record. You don't have a lot of experience as a musician or as a writer or what have you, but you have this energy. You want to put something down. Tell me about that first experience and what is it that you did to make the first track? And
So-
where was it?
So the first track was on DJ International.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, there was a movement going. So everybody would go into the studio, and everybody was kind of there for the love of it, and
Yeah.
everybody would involve themselves in the song.
Okay.
You could walk into the studio and be like, "Hey, maybe you should do this."
Uh-huh.
It was kind of a team effort,
Yes.
but at the same time, it was fun.
Yeah.
So on the Never Give Up record, you got Steve Farley.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, my friend who passed away, we were B-boys in Chicago, but he was part of the Zulu Nation.
Yeah.
Africa Islam, who was a DJ from New York,
Mhm.
a hip-hop DJ from Zulu Nation, flew in
Mhm.
and scratched on the record
Yeah. Wow.
because it was kind of merging hip-hop with
Yeah. Yeah.
house.
Mhm.
Ricky Dillard was in there. Peter Black, who was
All
one-
this was on the same record.
we were all in the same studio session, and
Yeah.
we all made this record in like one day.
Okay. What was your part? What was your contribution?
My contribution was I wrote the song "Never Give Up."
Okay. Well, that's a big one.
Not a words to "Never Give Up" were for Jesse.
Okay.
It was dedicated to Jesse. If you look on the B side,
Yeah.
it says in memory of Jesse Valdez.
Okay.
His name was Jesse Velez.
Okay.
DJ International put that misspelling out there, and they never
And
corrected.
they never corrected. Okay.
So "Never Give Up" was a song that was dedicated to Jesse because unfortunately he gave up.
Yeah.
So it kind of all clicked together.
And the words were "Never give up."
Yeah, it was all the pain you feel inside
Yeah.
is of trouble and not of pride.
Mm-hmm.
You lost your love is true. You know, it goes on and
Yeah,
talks
yeah, yeah.
really about your struggle.
Okay. And who sang it?
Keith Nunley and JMC.
Okay, so Keith normally sang that. Big ups to Keith and to JM Silk. Yeah, Jesse was your boy. Daryl said Jesse was his boy. Thanks, Daryl. So yeah, I'd love to hear about that studio experience. I love the way you just described it because in the earlier days it was like that. I've been in many studios with very minor contributions.
It wasn't as complicated as
Yeah.
it is now.
No, definitely. not.
Imagine a bunch of kids and
Yeah.
teenagers who, imagine
Yeah.
going out and how everybody had fun.
Oh, get it. I get it.
Imagine that same environment in a recording studio.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I do. I will tell you a quick story. I have a couple credits on music for, like I say, minimal contributions. Background singing, added a lyric here or there, maybe scratched on the back of a record. But one experience I had in New York was when I moved there and Frankie Knuckles was like, "Do you know how to edit?" I was like, "Nah, kind of, a little bit, whatever." He's like, "Well, come to the studio, you can help us edit." And I came there, I probably did 2 edits on this track. And I got the credit as the editor. I was like, Frankie was editing. But
So tell you a funny
but-
Frankie Knuckles story.
but that's that's the experience, you're right? Like people were hanging and everybody wanted, it was just all about love, and like everybody got credit. If you were there, you contributed anything, you were part of the experience.
So after Never Give Up came out, I went to
Yes.
another studio and I made White Knight Jack's house.
Yes.
And I had the reel,
Okay.
and they started playing it on the mix shows.
Uh-huh.
But at the time, Frankie was more of a niche.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get him to play a record back then, it
Yeah.
would cross into a whole other universe.
Yeah, but
Right.
that's true. That's true.
And I have my reel. I go to the warehouse. Now, if you know how the warehouse was back then,
Mm-hmm. What year was this?
this had to be 87, 89-ish, 88.
So this was that was the other warehouse.
It was
the
the-
one on Randolph.
No, this was the warehouse on Halsted.
Okay, so that was a power plant.
Okay,
It was Frankie Knuckles Club, but
right.
it wasn't. Yes.
I always associated any club Frankie Knuckles with
The
was
warehouse.
As a warehouse. So I'm at the power plant,
Okay.
and I kid you not, I had the reel,
Yes.
and I stood by the side of the DJ booth for 4 to 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept looking at me like, what is this guy standing here with? And I'm holding the reel. in my
Yeah.
hand. And I'm just trying to get his
Oh
attention.
my goodness.
And I think I stood there long enough where he finally was just like,
Just give it to me.
give it to me because you're annoying me standing here for 4 hours. Right? So I gave him the reel, and he played the whole entire 7-minute mix of it. And after that, he continued to play it and play it and play it.
All night.
I mean,
Over and over.
over and over. And he had a really interesting fan base.
Yeah.
And with the mix show and him playing the record, the demand for the record, hit imports, etc.,
Yes.
JR, all the music stores was in
Yeah.
demand.
That's wonderful.
So it kind of bled across all the markets.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget standing there, and I was so excited when I handed him this reel and he played it. Later on, I started being a promoter and throwing
Yeah.
events, and I was able to bring him to La Mirage.
Yeah.
So I started with Dwayne Kyles and Calvin
Mm-hmm.
throwing the house parties.
Mm-hmm. I forgot about that place. Yeah. I went there a few times.
It was La Mirage, and then it was the Click.
Where was
Heroes.
that? Oh my God.
On Michigan
That's
Avenue.
Michigan too.
Yeah, I would go there. You know, that's yeah. We were hanging out there, especially when it was Heroes. Me and my girl.
If you look
Aisha.
at my Instagram, I have a photograph of Frankie, me,
Yes.
Mickey Oliver. All of us are in this photograph.
Was that at Heroes?
No, that was at the promotion in store at JR's Music Room,
Oh, wonderful.
and we were trying to promote. It was like
Yeah.
pre-fame house.
Yes, I love it. Hey, I have a challenge for everybody who's listening. Uh, Post those pictures. Those like La Mirage, DJ Darlene Jackson said she's been to La Mirage, Heroes. I'm gonna post my Heroes pictures because I think those would be fun. I saw that picture of you and Frankie. That's really cool.
And if you look at how young we were,
Yeah.
I had hair. I was
Me
skinny.
too.
It was, but that was. And if you look at that
Yeah.
picture and you look at the different cultural people that were together, back then there was no barrier.
Yeah, no, we were all together.
Everybody was
Everybody
trying
was
to have a
hanging
good
out.
time.
And that's all that mattered. That really is. So let's talk a little. Spend a little time talking about this most recent adventure, which is a 3-part documentary called "In Our House," and it's a hit on Hip House. It's on Black Experience on Xfinity. I hope some of you guys were able to check that out, or still able to check it out. Terry Hunter, Immaculate, others producers, and you are featured in that film.
Well, I'm grateful for Terry and Immaculate and,
Yes.
and the Trojan Few.
Mm-hmm.
They're instrumental in doing a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and they made that happen. At the end of the day, they're the ones who put the sweat and tears and took the time and to curate what
Mhm.
they put together.
Yes.
So I think it's great. I think that I got disconnected.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
That's okay. I got you.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm gone again.
Okay. I got you. Keep going.
Okay.
You're fine. I can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, they went out and put together an amazing project.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot broader than just hip house.
Yeah.
I think it kind of tells, different
Mhm.
parts of the story.
Yeah, I think the producers did a really nice job of giving you Chicago history on house music. Sort of how we entered the hip hop scene,
Right.
and then really the fusion with those two. You worked in the past with Fast Eddie. I know you worked with Steve, Sundance, Farley. Can you talk about those early experiences?
They were great experiences because when me and Fast Eddie made the record Dum 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 Dum,
Yeah.
Girls Get Dumb,
Mm-hmm.
I was in the studio working on it. Eddie came in. I'm like, hey, you want to jump on? He's like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that record in like 2 hours. So that's kind of like the way we all worked back then.
Yeah, that's kind of how the magic can happen that way.
Yeah, and then the record went out and sold tens and tens of thousands of copies,
Mhm.
and we were told that it only sold 500 copies.
Wow, how did that happen?
Mystery, Chicago music label, Mysteries.
Okay,
Um,
what label was that?
I can't say.
See,
I'm
You
not going
gotta
through
say, that's the whole point.
that's the whole point of the show.
it. Okay.
No, you don't have to.
Yes, you do.
I try to be nice.
Chicago.
But I'll tell you an
What is
interesting
right
story
with-
how I found this out. So I was told, we only sold 500 copies, but
Yeah,
it's in regular rotation on all the radio stations.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So about a year later, I get a phone call from Tommy Boy in New York. They want to sign me.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I go to Tommy Boy, and I said, I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, why are you curious? I said, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
They said, why are you here? You sold 68,000 maxi singles
Mm-hmm.
in Chicago at $4.99.
Mm-hmm.
Do the math.
Mm-hmm.
I said, how do you know that? They said, here's your SoundScan numbers.
And did you know anything about SoundScan numbers before that meeting?
I did, but you needed SoundScan for radio play at the time.
Right.
And historically in Chicago, there's a lot of artists in Chicago
Mm-hmm.
who've sold millions of records,
Yes.
but they're not trackable, and they weren't trackable.
Right.
And
Well, how were they able to track it?
because maxi single was put out,
Mhm.
it had a barcode on it.
Okay.
So only the retailers that would scan barcodes would count.
Got it.
That's not counting all the other stores that
Oh,
doesn't have
yes.
sound scan.
That's
right?
true. But you didn't even know it sold 68,000 copies.
Well, it sold a lot more than that,
Yeah.
but only 68,000 of them were trackable on sound
How
scan.
many did you think you sold even
Well,
before
we were
that
told we only
conversation?
sold 500 copies.
See, that's just some messed up stuff.
And we were only given $500 a piece.
Yeah. Wow.
So do the math.
Yeah. Okay.
But I will say that business is business, and when you're young
Yeah.
and you accept things for
Yeah.
what they are,
Mhm.
you got to live with what your decisions are, right?
Yeah, that doesn't make it any better though. I mean, I think when people are exploited, whether you're being exploited because whether you're young or not in the business, you're being exploited, and that's irresponsible. Whoever does it,
Well, let me say this. There's a lot of talk about how Europe has stolen house music, and all these other companies have stolen house music.
Mhm.
The problem with house music is that the couple of main record labels that existed at that time,
Mhm.
they hid and kept secrets from all of the artists on how big they were
Right.
and how many records they sold.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was mismanaged because I don't think that a lot of the people that ran those companies had any experience
Doing that
themselves, right?
Right.
All they know is they had boatloads of money coming in.
Mhm.
They got kids that they can give $500 to,
Mhm.
and they were
They're churning out tracks left and right.
right.
Yeah.
And Chicago's house music industry has always been mismanaged.
Mhm.
Personal gain.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's a really good point that you're making. I don't think it excuses that behavior,
No.
but the fact that the people who were managing these companies, I won't go down the list of the companies. I think everybody knows who they are. If so, you can put it in the notes and talk to each other. But you're making a good point that they didn't know what they were doing either.
But here's the thing.
Or maybe they did, but
Well, they made a lot of money, and there was a lot of deprivation,
yeah.
and financial repression. I mean, you have artists in Chicago, I'm not going to say their names, who have sold millions of records
Yes.
globally.
Mhm.
They do not have the money that they should, even on a fair percentage. At this age in life, they should have retirement.
No.
They should have pension.
Yeah.
They should have accumulated wealth.
Yeah.
They do not have that because they were deprived of it as young kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was their labor. It was stolen.
Right. And now you have these people that are in the middle of their life, and what do they have for their success? Right?
I have to agree.
I'm not
with
trying
you.
to come on here and be controversial, but
listen,
no one talks
you
about
pick
this.
you picked the right show, and if you ever trust me, many people come on here and talk about it. Leonard Roy, who is one of my friends and very controversial figure of the house music community, he talks about this a lot. Sometimes in ways that hurt people, but he's right in some ways that we have not moved into this part of our lives, people in their 50s and 60s,
But here's
as
the
a community,
difference.
without those types of investments in their future. And some of that happened because they were stolen from in youth, and some of it happened because they were continuing to sort of chase something without that foundation. But go ahead.
Well, everyone sees things through their own lens.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
And everybody has had their own experience.
Mhm.
Leonard, I don't know him well.
Right.
I've known of him.
Mhm.
He says a lot of things that are unfiltered, and that's a
That's
good
true.
thing. The problem with house music is a lot of people try to sweep things under the rug,
Right.
and people that speak openly about some facts that are true and some that are controversial
Mhm.
always seem to catch some heat.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, Leonard, if you're watching, I know you like the heat. So he likes the heat. He lives down south. He likes the heat.
And you know what? I'll give him respect. He has a pension. He wanted to serve his country,
Yes.
and
Thank
he's
you
a
for your
different he's
service.
a different kind of human being.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people that came out of the house industry who
Mhm.
weren't entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
it's a very struggling process.
It's difficult. It's difficult being an artist. I mean, let's keep it real. Even if you are a successful artist, most artists are not gonna accumulate a lot of money. It just doesn't happen that way in an artistic community.
Right.
in any artistic community. You got what with actors, it's a 2 to 3% employment rate, not unemployment, employment.
Right.
Like that's how many people can actually make a living doing what they do. And I don't know that the recording business is much different, especially now that things are so cheap and so easy to make, to steal, etc. It's very
Well, imagine back then and during this time,
hmm
you know, record to buy a CD was $4 or $5.
right?
You sold 100,000 maxi singles. That's a $500,000.
Yes.
Now, what do you get now if you get 100,000 streams for 0.3 cents a stream?
I can't add up that fast. Doesn't sound like a lot.
You can't even go out to dinner.
Mm.
So,
What's the point?
what's the point?
Yeah.
Everything's digital and everything is, you know, instead of the artist getting paid
hmm
a percentage. For instance, how many of you pay for streaming subscriptions every month for $9?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Everybody does. Right.
Right. So, music is basically became free.
hmm And that's why you have to do something else. I was talking to one of my friends who was actually does very well in the industry, and she said to me, you can't just do one thing now. You know, you have to have multiple income sources if you're going to be a musical artist.
Right.
And she's got a lot of irons in the fire, and that's how she stays on top. But that's difficult. So let's talk about now. You have a lot in your canon. You've done many things. What's happening now? You're still making music. You're still putting it out on Beatport and other places. Talk about your career.
My other career is an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I'm behind a lot of concerts and shows.
Yes.
I own the History of House Music brand.
The History of House Music brand.
Right. The
Okay.
History of Freestyle brand.
Mm-hmm.
I just got done promoting Housekeeping with Navy Pier.
Okay.
We had over
Good.
5,000 people.
That's
there.
that's great.
I was in the nightclub business for the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had Voyeur, Door 21, Excalibur.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I kind of was more of an entrepreneur
Yes.
because obviously you have to make.
Speaking of different streams.
Right. You know, and you need multiple streams of revenue.
Right.
But that's pretty much what I've done.
And what are you doing now?
Same thing.
Same thing. Are you managing a club now?
No, actually, the market's kind of different.
Yeah.
I have other investments that I'm doing.
That's good. That's good. Anything in the music? I mean, you're still making tracks?
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff that's coming out soon.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm working on stuff now.
Do you want people to buy it?
No, they're gonna stream it for free.
I had to ask that question because he's like so blasé about it. Well, I'm making some music. You can buy it or not.
Well, you can't buy it anymore.
I don't care if you get it.
When you're everything's free, you know.
So you're doing it for the love of it.
I always did it for the love.
That's great. Well, listen. So it sounds like your dream job. Is this? Are you living your dream life right now?
I'm living my best life.
Your best life. That's good. I can tell. You have a sense of peace around you. Like your aura is very calm and settled, and I believe you.
Yeah, I work hard, but you know, you got to take every day for what today is, because anything can happen tomorrow.
That's right.
You know?
So, is there anyone in particular who you would love to work with that you haven't worked with so far?
No.
No? There's no one out there who.
No.
Now, is that because you just can't think of anyone, or is it because you are sort of in the moment, whoever crosses your path?
No, I kind of did. I kind of think I've done what I wanted to do.
Yeah, just in terms of
and I'm content with that.
collaborations.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, we live in a collabo world right now.
Yeah. What does that mean?
If you listen to a lot of the current music, you need 2 or 3 artists on one record to have a hit.
Oh.
Everything is collabos.
Okay.
Think about it.
Okay.
How many, even, turn on hip hop. Look at the latest hip hop records.
Yes.
You need 2 or 3 artists. Everything's a feature.
Interesting.
You know, music's changed. I think.
Fascinating.
I think that music, goes through cycles.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking forward to is what is the next cycle.
Right.
You know, everything's kind of what it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next big thing going to be?
What's your prediction?
I hope it happens soon, and I don't know what it is, honestly. You know?
All right, so we're moving into 2024. What did you want to leave behind for 2023? What do you want to get into for 2024? And it doesn't have to be for you. It can be for the world, for Chicago, for our industry.
I don't know. I think that I would like to see a lot of boundaries that are up where people
Mm-hmm.
come down.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see things get back to the way they were in the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
when everybody kind of did things for the love of it
Yeah.
and got along, and there wasn't this disgruntled competition
Mm-hmm.
that seems to have been built by a lot of people who were deprived of their money.
Yeah.
If all of these artists received the money that they were entitled to,
Yeah.
nobody'd be mad at each other.
I love that you're saying that, because I often wonder what's the common denominator when I read a lot of these comments, and we haven't seen this until social media.
Right.
They're probably just talking behind each other's backs.
Well, here's the problem with social media.
Yeah.
You know, you've been in the music industry a long time. There's a lot of people online that
Mhm.
say they're legends because of social media, and nobody knows who they were.
Yeah.
Anybody can go online right now and market themselves as a legend of music.
Yeah.
You know, guys that used to carry your crates are now legends on Facebook.
Because they were crate carriers.
And no one knows the difference. People only know what they scroll and they
Mhm.
see what they read, what they believe. It's propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. We get a lot. We see that a lot.
Imagine this: when we first started off,
Mm-hmm.
we had hit records, and there was no social media.
That's right.
It was word of mouth. So
Yeah.
if you had a hit record, or you were famous, or your name was known,
Mm-hmm.
it's because you actually did something
Yeah.
to create that.
Well, people knew you.
People knew you
Yes.
because of what your work was
Yeah.
and what you did.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know, if you got $1 million and a publicist, you could buy propaganda ads all day.
You can also buy Instagram followers.
You could buy anything. The whole world's for sale.
I've seen some of that. It's a little bit crazy. I think you're right. I am always looking skeptically at what I see in social media, and especially folks who promote themselves. It feels, I don't know, I feel a little saddened by it because it feels a little desperate, especially when you see people of a certain age, just doing that. It's like, it makes me sad for them.
Well, I think social media, to
Mhm.
some extent, has eroded reality.
Yeah.
Everyone feels that they have to show this grand lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I got my Louis Vuitton. I got my. We're in Aruba. We're in Mexico.
Yeah.
Everybody's showing this false.
So why?
false-
Why do people? Why do we need to do that?
Well, how many people get on social media and be like, "Hey, I'm broke. My kids ain't got no Pampers. We don't have any milk in the house. Oh, I'm not hanging out with them because
Yeah.
they don't have it together."
Yeah.
And we're in a society where everything is for sale.
I think you see kind of these two extremes. Have you noticed this on social media, Lauren? Especially like either people are just living their best life and everything is wonderful and all the pictures they're in the Bahamas, or they're begging for money. Like, or there's tragedy. Like, you're right. There's sort of not in between there. I mean, because the GoFundMe's make me sad too. But then after a while, it's like this same person just did this like GoFundMe like 3
Right.
times.
Well,
So
it's are there people who need GoFundMe?
of course there
Absolutely.
are.
But everybody has a different kind of hustle.
GoFundMe can be a hustle. It can be. I mean, not for everyone. I mean, I know there's.
And it's interesting because I've seen some GoFundMe's
Yeah.
that there's always controversy with.
Yeah.
And I've seen some honestly good people
Yeah.
who have had very difficult things happen to me,
Yeah.
and for some reason their GoFundMe's don't get any money.
That's
They're
interesting.
very, very limited. Right?
Yeah.
And if someone's situation is overexposed,
Mhm.
they seem to get lost.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know what? We've already burned through an hour. See how fast that goes?
Time flies when you're having fun.
I think it does. You know what I'm going to ask Lauren to do? What we started, first of all, if you're just joining us, we're here with White Knight. Born in Chicago, professionally, American rapper, songwriter, producer, entrepreneur, record executive. He's done it all. And I feel like we just scratched the surface. I feel like we just started to get to know each other. So maybe you'll come back.
I'll be back.
Are you positive?
100%.
Okay, good deal. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I greatly
Appreciate you.
appreciate it.
And we've been around each other for a long time. Red Dog, Humboldt Park, Wicker Park, the Loft,
And now I never.
and now in Evanston. All right, you're listening to Street Beat. This is the Bench House Show. Mother Branch here with the crew. WNRI 89.3 FM and HD1. We're going to take you out with a little more White Night. Is that what we're listening to, Lauren?
Yep, think so.
Yeah.